The Elden Ring DLC Shadow of the Erdtree is almost here, and it will give us 8 completely new weapon types, new spells, armors, amulets, and of course many new enemies and bosses to challenge your skills. So here is everything you need to know before playing the DLC. And you probably already know this, but I still wanted to quickly mention that there are some big requirements you need to meet before you can access the expansion. You can, by the way, already preload it right now, so it's immediately ready on launch day. But if you want to play the DLC day 1, you also need to make sure you've defeated the boss Starscourge Radahn in Caelid and Mohg Lord of Blood in the Mohgwyn Mausoleum. While I imagine most of you will have already done this, technically both are optional bosses, so I'll leave guides on how to reach them in the video description. Once you've beaten both, you'll find a new NPC named Lida next to Miquella's Cocoon in Mohg's boss arena. We've already seen an artwork of this NPC, and I really want to know how we get that armor and blade as soon as possible, but for now at least Lida seems to be friendly. They're actually the leader of Miquella's warband who traveled to the Land of Shadow, many of whom you'll also meet over the course of the DLC. First, we want to head there though, which you do by interacting with Miquella's Cocoon. This will teleport you to the new map where the DLC takes place, and to be clear, it's an entirely separate map from the base game. You can freely travel between both maps as you please, but it's not connected to any part of the lands between. Once you enter the new map, you're immediately greeted with a beautiful vista that offers many interesting landmarks for you to explore. One of these is one of these walking brazier giants who is already being compared to the tree sentinel from the base game, meaning that it's a very strong enemy that you're probably supposed to fight when you're stronger, but you can try to fight them early on if you want to. And yeah, this thing is terrifying. It's like a roaming version of the fire giant. Good to note, by the way, is that while the difficulty of the DLC is said to be on par with the endgame of Elden Ring, you can play the DLC at any level. Most reviewers noted they entered the DLC somewhere between level 120 and 150, so depending on how challenging you want the experience to be, that seems to be the sweet spot. And while you of course gain more runes to level up even more over the course of the DLC, there's also a new type of progression that's exclusive to the expansion. There's a special item called a Erdtree fragment that can be used at a site of grace to unlock a permanent blessing. This boosts both your damage reduction and attack power by about 5%, and this buff can be leveled up multiple times by finding and investing more Erdtree fragments. There's a similar item called Revert Spirit Ashes, which can be used to unlock and upgrade a similar buff that applies to both spirit summons and your Mount Torrent. However, these buffs only work when you're playing in the DLC area, so once you go back to the lands between, you'll have to rely on your regular stats again. A ton of these Erdtree fragments are found off the beaten path, so exploration in Shadow of the Erdtree will be extra rewarding. And it's going to be a pretty large map to explore too. While Miyazaki stated earlier in the year that the map size would be comparable to the starting region Limgrave, it's in fact much bigger thanks to denser map design and more verticality in the open world design. Playtime is of course semi-dependent on how much you struggle with bosses, but the expansion should be somewhere between 25 hours to just do the main quest to up to 50 hours if you want to do everything. The layered design of the Land of Shadow also means that getting to some of these new areas is often a challenge in and of itself. So that means that exploration will be just as rewarding as it was in the main game, with you finding tunnels and hidden paths to areas you maybe didn't even know existed. Of course, the map is also filled with the traditional smaller dungeons and overworld encounters like the giant fire brazier I mentioned earlier. And these main and side dungeons will of course also house a ton of new loot for us to find, including a ton of new weapons and spells. There are about 100 new weapons, including 8 new categories, each with several variations. And it's probably not surprising, but these 8 new weapon types are some of the coolest additions in the expansion. I think most people have been looking forward to the unarmed combat style since it was shown in the reveal trailer, and we now know that flying kick combo is actually the weapon art for this particular weapon, which is called the Dryleaf art. But even crazier are the beast claws, which include these leaps in the air as you come clawing down on your opponent. Really useful for an aggressive playstyle, and I can also see these becoming very popular in PvP thanks to their high mobility. And as someone who recently played through the game with the Bloodhound claws as their primary weapon, I thought these would be my new main, but then I saw the light greatsword. These long, elegant blades allow for surprisingly quick combos, including a triple/guard counter. This particular blade, called Milady, also has a weapon art that allows you to perform a leaping stab or a quick series of slashes. The way it combos just looks so smooth, and yeah, I think week, I already decided what my new main weapon is going to be. And we'll of course be making guides on how to get these new weapons when the DLC goes live, so subscribe to not miss those videos and leave a like if you enjoyed this one so far. What's also really cool is that some of the new weapon types encourage new playstyles that we didn't really have in the game before. Another new category are the thrown weapons like this hammer. Instead of performing a heavy attack with R2 or RT, you perform a ranged throwing attack, after which the weapon is immediately returned to your hand. And this throwing attack does not cost any resources, so no ammo or FP. So weapons from this category allow you to seamlessly switch between ranged and melee attacks. The same is true for the perfumer's bottle, which throws out elemental dust like ice or fire. And yeah, this is an entire weapon type, so that means you have sprinting attacks, charged heavy attacks, and even dual wielding. Another interesting category that allows for a new style of play are thrusting shields, which can be used as both protection and a weapon. Then there are reverse grip swords, which are these paired blades that you wield backhanded and look like a pretty quick weapon type, and great katanas, which are exactly what you think they are. Of course, on top of that, there are also new spells like this fire dive and new spirit summons, including one for my least favorite enemy in the game, the finger creeper. We'll also be making a lot of new friends, as the members of Miquella's warband we also saw in the story trailer have made it to the Land of Shadow. They're often found at these golden crosses, which are markers left by Miquella and should also help us with retracing his steps. But yeah, we'll be meeting with this warband, do quests for them, and in doing so, learn more about these new lands and Miquella himself. Again, I'm hoping we're getting some of these armor sets, and I think I spotted at least one of these NPCs also being available as an NPC summon during one of the boss fights, which might be related to their quest. There are also some interesting new non-hostile creatures like these illuminated worms that will turn hostile when attacked, so you know, be nice and just leave them alone. But most of the creatures you come across in the Land of Shadows will of course be hostile, as the expansion will include many new enemies and bosses. There are 10 main bosses that will drop a remembrance, and even more additional bosses you'll encounter in caves and catacombs. We already know the identity of some of these, like the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. I really love the design, as you can clearly see some human aspects from underneath the cloth and even hands holding the jaws of the lion. This dangerous beast attacks relentlessly during his first phase, and for the second he will swap between an air, ice and lightning themed moveset. So it will probably take some time before you've grown accustomed to this boss's entire array of attacks, and he is just the appetizer. As I said, 10 of these new bosses will also drop a remembrance, which of course allows you to craft a weapon or a spell used by that boss, so you can add it to your own arsenal. And of course there is a great variety of regular enemies to fight too, from more traditional ones like ghosts and bandits to more unique variants like these gargoyle birds. There are some returning enemies from the base game, but they are far and few between. Most of the DLC is populated by new enemies and bosses, so expect regular visits back to a site of grace. On top of all that, there are some smaller new surprises like new consumables and talismans. There's also a new tier for your Flask of Wonders physics that allows you to perform Sekiro style perfect blocks, so I am definitely hunting that down when I get my hands on the expansion. And we'll of course be making videos on the DLC when it launches on June 21st. So subscribe for way more Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree content, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and check out another Elden Ring video by clicking on the screen. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.